Thank you for joining Asgard in our latest video. Today's video is going to be going over comparing a common backup architecture against Asgard's zero trust backup architecture, just so we can identify and visualize what the differences are. So let's get into what a common backup architecture looks like. Here we can see the common on-site or cloud configurations for backups and some of the vulnerabilities that come along with it. Now, for starters, if you are set up with a local-only backup scenario, we'll look at the left side of this image here. A very common setup is a service provider device will be sent and deployed onto your client's site. Then it will either have a network-attached storage or NAS unit deployed with it, or it will have its own internal storage system. This will then reach into your local network and back up your servers, devices, or your file servers, whatever items are being backed up. It will then put copies onto your local storage. And for a local-only deployment, that's as far as it goes. For larger deployments and for a more common and more robust, to follow the 3-2-1 rule, these backups will then be taken from the service provider device and then copied out across the internet to service provider storage nodes set up wherever those storage nodes may reside. Now, this does open up for several possible vulnerabilities. The first and foremost is that any public IP can be DDoSed. And if you're going to hide that public IP through some DNS mapping, that could lead to multiple site failures. If nefarious parties were able to figure out what your publicly mapped DNS or IPs are, they could then flood those with DDoSing, and through the DNS mapping, they could bring down multiple sites instead of just the storage nodes. Depending on your network infrastructure, nodes could be accessed directly from the client side. And this generally is for people that have multiple sites and they were backing up site A to site B. However, if you have an IPsec tunnel constantly keeping these two connected with the same domain on both sides, if they crack one side, they crack the other side, and then your backups in general are just not safe at that point. These service provider boxes generally cannot sustain an entire environment. They're usually sold with the idea that during an emergency situation, you could fail over to it. However, in our experience and what we've seen, they can only support one, maybe two servers, especially not if you have a big, beefy file server or a SQL server that requires a lot of resources. These devices just simply can't handle it. Lastly, local backup copies are vulnerable to network sniffers. Ransomware has become very, very advanced in the last several years. When deployed, they now seek backup extension file types anywhere on the system or on the network, so your local backup copies become an incredible liability. If you rely on simply local only, you're at risk. Now, we have identified several providers that do use this similar architecture. They're Barracuda, StorageCraft, Quorum, and Commvault. Now, we're not going to say they provide an inferior product, but these products do have these potential vulnerabilities out there. Now, we do know that some of these can be customized and specialized. Sometimes you can have only the local copies or only the cloud copies. However, the way they are mapped leaves that public IP and the public DNS as a potential vulnerability. Now, if we look at our zero trust backup infrastructure, this is what it looks like. You'll immediately notice that there is no client device itself deployed on the networks. Our software program gets deployed on any device that is needing to be backed up, and then we map that through a secure DNS name onto our Cloud Connect server. Instead of using a publicly mapped name or a DNS name, we use the secure DNS name from the Gabriel service. This allows us to communicate on a network that is not part of the public IP or public DNS system. This secures your backups. This just hardens the security on your network that much more. And several perks come along with this as well. Your backups are air-gapped with no public names. So not only are your backups air-gapped and removed from your environment with no real connection to them, but the connection is through non-public names so that you can't even follow a trail to them. This mitigates all risks of public IPs. All the risks of DDoSing go away because we're using secure DNS names. This removes the liability of those on-site backups. So now ransomware won't be able to find your Veeam extension files locally. Backups sit in a near-ready state in our environment and can be spun up in under an hour. This is something we do for all of our clients. We understand the necessity to speedy recovery. And if you don't have the local backups, we understand you'll need to be able to failover immediately. Backups that can be spun up in under an hour, with you being able to connect in under 60 minutes. These speeds can meet or exceed any RTO or RPO for any industry. So now that you've seen the difference between a common backup architecture and a zero trust backup architecture, you'll see how the Asgard approach slims down the backup configuration and it hardens the security that much more. If you would like to see how we can help harden your security and keep your backups secure, please feel free to reach out to us at info@asgardmsp.com, give us a call at 888-941-9941, or just visit our website at www.asgardmsp.com. And as always, thank you for watching.